CBSSports.com. David, I appreciate you filling in on a short notice, but it's been a month since we've had you on this program, and boy, has this been the craziest month I can remember in summertime radio as far as college football goes. We've had NIL, we've had now expansion talk, we have Texas and OU going to the SEC. Now Texas officially accepting the invite, still waiting on OU. I'm guessing their official notice will drop later today, and that will be a done deal. It's been a jam-packed time. Can you remember a July that has brought this much news?
No, absolutely not. And it is now official. OU, their board meeting took forever. I was watching the live stream, and it was basically just their president, their AD, and members of their board of regents just talking about how great OU is and just how wonderful this move is going to be, and explaining all the reasons why they're doing it. And then they finally voted, and they're officially doing it. So yeah, it's fitting, that it's July 30th. We've got 1 day left in the month. Can't imagine a crazier off-season month in college sports. If there's been one, I certainly don't remember it. So it's crazy that we've got actual football, in about a month, because the focus has been on just everything else. And you guys are right there in the middle of it. I mean, I don't know how Arkansas fans feel about this, but I mean, I think it's kind of cool that you're really going to be right there in the heart of, honestly, more like the geographic center of the conference now, more so than the last Western frontier that you guys were, 10 years ago before Missouri and A&M joined. So it's interesting, and it makes me excited even more so for that Arkansas-Texas game, the second week of the season.
Yeah, it's been mostly received positive here. I think most people are, I'd say about 85% of people are bringing on Texas OU. Welcome to the big boy league. Get ready to get the SEC treatment. Texas, you can't be a bully anymore. One team, one vote type of situation. And then I guess with most fan bases, you always have that 10% that are just, pessimistic about everything, that, it's already been so hard for us to rebuild. And while Sam Pittman's got a lot of momentum, Texas and OU are going to steal that. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited to be not only in Arkansas, but be now fully immersed in the SEC as Texas and OU come, and living here in the River Valley here in Fort Smith. Half of the cars I see are Oklahoma, so it's going to be great for everybody in the Fort Smith area, and I'm sure it's going to be great for everybody across the state. So obviously OU comes in as, I guess, the more of a trouble, more of a power type of team that has just ran through the Big 12. But Texas seems like the bigger get. Why is that? Is it because it's still just the brand, or why has it always felt like, and I don't want to call OU Texas's little brother, but it almost does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the eyeballs and the brand and Texas is the highest grossing athletic department in the country per USA Today's most recent database. They are number one. So if you're thinking about it from a dollar standpoint and a fan base standpoint, the saying of everything is bigger in Texas comes to mind. But in terms of recent success, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that Oklahoma is the football program in better shape right now. I mean, I think they could have stayed in the Big 12. Oklahoma could have and walked to a 12-team college football playoff every season. I mean, they're doing a pretty good job of getting there now with it at 4 teams. So that's an interesting perspective is the fact that OU, I see why they're doing it. I just listened to their AD and their president talk about it for 2 hours. But from a competitive standpoint, I kind of wonder, how does Lincoln Riley actually really feel about this if you gave him truth serum? Because it's going to make his career winning percentage fall a little bit, and it's going to, especially if we're talking about delaying the expansion of the playoff, and that doesn't happen, say, until 4 or 5 years after Oklahoma starts playing in the SEC. It's going to make it a lot harder for them to get to the playoff in the short run. And then, of course, when it comes to Texas, I mean, my goodness, they haven't even sniffed the playoff.
No.
So I don't know what going to the SEC does for them from a competitive standpoint. It's not going to be easy. I guess if you want to take an optimistic look at it, Sark just came from the SEC and did a pretty good job there as an offensive coordinator. So wouldn't that be wild if Sark actually became the first former Saban assistant to beat the GOAT?
That would be crazy that we've had all these different opportunities. You have already so many people in the SEC try to take down Keene Saban, having been a disciple, and just can't do it. And Sark's going to be able to come in and what if he did it on his first try? That Texas people would never be quiet about that. But the conference they're leaving, obviously the Big 12, and Bob Bowlsby has gone crazy. He's acting insane. And I was telling our listening audience how I've hated Bob Bowlsby since 2015, the last time expansion got brought up. And, everybody in Memphis was pretty excited, thinking that our number was finally going to be called. We were finally getting a seat at the big table. And the last second, it got axed, and they decided to say at 10. So this isn't shocking for me because I've always hated Bob Bowlsby. But what is going through his mind, and why is he acting almost childish, and why do you think he thinks that's going to save his conference?
I mean, he literally got stabbed in the back and blindsided in the most brutal way. I mean, I don't blame him, honestly, for just going and yelling into every live microphone that he can find right now, because, I mean, I would be feeling scorned if I were him as well. And he's got those 8 remaining member institutions there who are probably not too happy with him. And I mean, look, what could he have really done? I don't know. I mean, Oklahoma and Texas really did this in the cover of night, and I'm not sure if there was anything he could have done. But you know what? Maybe he could have gone back. If you want to go back to the first wave of realignment, I mean, I don't know exactly what the leadership structure of that league was then, but I mean, if somebody's eventually going to write the obituary of the Big 12. And I don't think the errors that you're going to point to as the downfall are errors that were made, in the last 2 weeks. I think they were errors that were probably made, 10 to 15 years ago when they failed to position themselves in the first wave of realignment, to really be a viable league, in the long term. So, you think about that conference and think about when we were growing up and they had, Nebraska and Colorado and Texas A&M and Missouri. I mean, it was a legitimate football power that over recent years had really just kind of dwindled to being a one-team league in a lot of respects, with Oklahoma, with Texas being down, with Oklahoma State never quite being able to break through. And, of course, Iowa State should be really good this year. But, I mean, if you're counting on Iowa State to be your second-best team, it's no wonder that, the TV networks aren't chomping at the bit to throw money at you.
You're right. When back in the day, I can remember plenty of moments where the Big 12 was a powerhouse in college football. I remember watching primetime Kansas and Missouri, believe it or not. I remember watching primetime Michael Crabtree and Texas Tech going up against Texas. I remember the A&M OU battles. It was great. And Nebraska, obviously, on the tail end of that success, but we're still competitive, still were able to dominate. I mean, you think back to Ndamukong Suh's years at Nebraska, decent years. Taylor Martinez had some decent years those were probably the only successful times under Bo Pelini. But they were an actual conference. They weren't a stepping stone. And outside of OU and Texas, right now, the only other one that you can really point at is Iowa State. I think they are still primed. Matt Campbell's done a great job at Iowa State with that program. But with the Big 12, you said you think it's going to die. So how does it shape out for the rest of the 8? Is it an AAC type of merger? Is it they go to the Big 10, Pac-12, ACC, and we get even closer to that 64, 65 team league by its own?
Yeah, so I think for the time being, they're rallying the troops and saying, we're going to stick together and weather this storm and whatnot. But I think that's largely because there aren't really any viable alternatives at this time. I think what maybe their vision is to go out and kind of restructure and reload. But if you are a school, let's say a UCF, Houston, Memphis, Cincinnati, Boise State, BYU, and maybe one of those cream of the crop schools that are kind of next in line to maybe get a bid to another league, are you really trying to go to the Big 12 right now?
No.
Because we already see what kind of precarious situation they're going to be in in just a few years with their next TV rights deal. Because I'm just going to go ahead and say, I don't think ESPN and the Big 12 are going to be doing business again.
I don't think so either.
Anytime soon. Certainly not if Bob Bowlsby is still around. So that, I think, kind of limits, what they can do there. And so, I mean, if I'm one of those schools I just mentioned, I'd be talking to AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco and saying, hey, why don't we be the aggressor here? Why don't we go get Boise State and BYU? And then, you know what? If Cincinnati and UCF decide to bolt, well, you know what? We're just as good as we were before. So ultimately, what I think will happen is the 8 will pretend like they're going to stick together for an indeterminate length of time. But then when West Virginia gets that bid that it wants from the ACC, or when Iowa State gets a bid from the Big Ten, or when those Texas schools get snatched up by the Pac-12, then it all craters, and there will be a couple of teams, really at that point, looking for a home and fighting for their lives. So that's how I see it going down. Is the Big 12 acting like it's going to reload in the short term, but then in the long run, its members will start to get poached, and that's how it will disintegrate.
How long will Texas and OU stay in the Big 12? Are they going to really stay for another 4 years until the contract expires? Like both have released a statement saying that they will be joining the SEC when it expires, because that's going to be an awkward 4 years. I mean, we've gone through some awkward presidencies the last 4 years. I'm sure most people have, whether you're right or left. But this might take the cake as far as awkwardness.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't see it lasting another 4 years. I think if push comes to shove, and say the Big 12 does stay together, and there's no easy out, for Texas and Oklahoma, I think they will pony up and find a way to pay those, some are saying $80 million exit fees. And then that's no small sum, but when you're talking about a move that in the long run is going to be so beneficial for you financially, I think those institutions can take that hit in the short run. I mean, I think in Texas, that's a call to 4 or 5 boosters.
Yeah, it ain't that many.
Honestly, right?
They got to go through the whole Rolodex.
Right, yeah, not at all. And Oklahoma, I think, could manage as well. So I think if that's what it comes down to, they could do that as soon as, 2022, honestly, and be in the SEC next season. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that's the case at all. What they hope happens, and what the Big 12 is accusing ESPN of doing, is making the conference disintegrate. And then if it disintegrates, then Texas and Oklahoma can presumably get a free pass and not have to pay an exit fee. So that would be their preference. But even without that, I still think they'll find a way to pony up and pay their way out and be in the SEC much sooner than 2025.
Talking with David Cobb from CBS Sports. David, we are up against the break, but I do just real quick want to get your opinion on the piece that you wrote on Ohio State commit Quinn Ewers. Is that how you pronounce it? Ewers. Thinking about he might skip his senior year. Do you think this is the start of a trend, or is this an outlier?
I think it's interesting. It's going to force Texas high school football to rethink. It's not like they're behind the times. Since when should high school athletic associations be, considering whether or not players should profit when they're literally, 16 years old? But with as proud of a tradition as there is in high school football there in Texas, they might have to rethink, maybe allowing high school players to benefit off their name, image, and likeness. It just sounds silly to even say that out loud, talking about high school players. But hey, if the guy is going to leave South Lake Carroll and go to Ohio State and enroll a year early because he can't make money in high school, then, I guess that's his prerogative. And, and honestly, it could actually have more implications on the field than we think, because you got to remember, Ohio State does not return a single quarterback who's thrown a pass in the college game. So we're talking about the consensus number 1 overall prospect in the 2022 class. And so if he ends up on Ohio State's campus in a month, I wouldn't be shocked if he actually gets a few in-game reps before this upcoming season is over.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be crazy. David, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate you, especially on such a short notice. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you later, all right?
All right, man. Sounds good.
Thanks. That's David Cobb from CBS Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at David W. Cobb. When we come back, we're going to take your phone calls, read your texts. We're also going to get into some Olympic talk, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on ESPN Arkansas and hitthatline.com.